We are on 82A, and we are going to examine the takanot, the rules established by Ezra. Of course, Ezra, together with Nehemiah, was the leader of the return from Bavel at the close of the 70-year exile between the two temples. And he brought people back to the land of Israel and rebuilt the city of Yerushalayim and so on. So Asar Takanos Tiken Ezra. And by the way, Ezra was really clearly a pivotal figure in Jewish history. He, to my mind, and to I think the Gemara kind of alludes to this. He was kind of the Moshe Rabbeinu of his time, as it were. He was both shared the political leadership and clearly was a very strong religious leader in restoring Judaism, traditional Judaism, I guess you would say, to a community that in the land of Israel that had fallen on hard times during the 70-year exile. Asar Takanos Tiken Ezra, and he established 10 regulations. Shekaran b'mincha b'Shabbos, you read the Torah Shabbos afternoon at mincha. V'karan b'sheni b'chamishi, and on Monday and Thursday, as we do today. V'danin b'sheni b'chamishi, and that courts would meet on Mondays and Thursdays. U'mechabsim b'chamishi b'Shabbos, and to do laundry on Thursday. V'ochlin shum b'erev Shabbos, to eat garlic on Friday. Perhaps means Friday night. If you want it, when you're baking bread, women who bake bread should get up and do it early. A woman should wear sinar, might be some kind of underwear, undergarments. A woman should comb her hair before she goes to the mikvah. And he gave license to spice merchants or perfume merchants to circulate in towns. V'tikain Tevila L'Balei Karayin, and he also established immersion in a mikvah tevila for people who had a nocturnal emission. And for men who had a nocturnal emission, they had to go to the mikvah. So the Gemara will address each of these in turn. You read the Torah on Shabbos afternoon at mincha, mishum yoshvei kranos, because of the people who kind of sit on the corners. In other words, people who are engaged in business in the streets. So the idea is that they're unable to come to services on Monday and Thursday and hear the Torah because they're busy with their work. They've got to open the stores early, etc. So they had this additional chance to hear words of Torah since they weren't there on Monday and Thursday. So the Gemara says, okay, so V'shei Yukarim b'Sheni Chamishi, reading on Mondays and Thursdays. Ezra Tiken, was that an Ezra idea? V'hamei Kara Havamitakna was much earlier. The Tanya, we have a brisa. The people went in the desert after the Exodus, 3 days in the desert, and they didn't find water. Darshir Shuma Samru, those people who would homiletically interpret verses, said, Ein mayim el Torah. What does water here mean? It's a metaphor for Torah. There's a verse in, I think it's Yeshayahu, that says, whoever is thirsty, go and find water. And it's clearly, Yeshayahu is it's a metaphor for finding God, for finding Torah. Nilu. So when it says they went 3 days in the desert without water or without Torah, they were tired, they were exhausted. The prophets among them made a takana, an institution, that you would read the Torah Shabbos. Then on Sunday there's no Torah reading. Karin b'Sheni. Then you would read on Monday. Umasikim shlishi revi, and then no Torah reading through Tuesday and Wednesday. Karin b'Chamishi, you read on Thursday. Masikim erev Shabbos, not on Friday. That way, there's no 3-day period without Torah. The longest period there is Tuesday, Wednesday, where there's no reading of the Torah. So anyway, this precedes Ezra. So like we see that the Monday and Thursday was already established as a day for reading the Torah. So why are we attributing this to Ezra? Because the original idea was not that much Torah. One person would read 3 psukim. Iname tlasa gavri tlasa psuke, or 3 people would read 1 each. So basically, you had a total of 3 verses of Torah. Connected Kolim, Levim, Israelim. Why 3? That corresponds to the 3 kinds of Jews, 3 classes, Kohanim, Levim, and regular people. Also, who tiken tlasa gavri? Ezra came along and says, no, that's not enough. We're going to have 3 readers, vasara psuke, and a minimum of 10 verses. Keneged Asar Batlanim. Why 10? That corresponds or commemorates or something those Batlanim, which are people. Mishnah in Megillah or in Tanis states that a city should have at least 10 people who are engaged with the religious life, running of the synagogue. They basically spend their days in the synagogue, davening, learning Torah, keeping things running. So 10 psukim, so it's a longer, the minimum required on Mondays and Thursdays, according Ezra made it longer. Ezra also said courts would meet on Mondays and Thursdays, because then people are there. Mondays and Thursdays were the market days. So since they're already there, and since they're anyway, well, the Gemara says since they're already coming on Mondays and Thursdays from the surrounding towns to hear the Torah reading, so there's a good time. They're in town already. Whereas usually they're in remote places, the people who don't live in the city. Therefore, those are good days for the courts to meet, so they can deal with any things that those people require. Why do you eat garlic on Fridays? Because Fridays is a good day for marital relations, for sex between husbands and wives. The side will be like a tree that gives its fruit in the right time. The Rav Yehuda says Rav Kana, some say it was Rav Nachman, Rav Kana, some say it was Rav Kana, Rav Yochanan, or maybe it was Rav Yochanan. Giving your fruit from time to time is a reference to people who have sex with their wives once a week, or from one Friday to the next Friday night. So that's the reason that you eat garlic. What does garlic have to do with having, with a good night for having sex? Tana Rabbanan, Chamisha Dvarim Ne'amru B'Shum. The rabbi said 5 things about garlic. Masbia umashchin. It fills you up. It warms you up. Matzil panim. It gives you a radiant countenance. Umar b'hazera, and it increases your sperm count. V'hori kinim shebivnei me'ayim, and it kills parasites in your intestines. So the point is the 4th thing, which is it ups your semen count, your sperm count. So that's a good that is kind of a aphrodisiac that's good to eat on Fridays. And some say also about garlic that it increases love and decreases jealousy. So that's also a good thing that also bodes well for having sex with your spouse on Friday nights. They said that when you're baking bread, women who bake bread should get up early. Why? Because when the poor people start coming knocking at the door, your bread will be already baked and you'll have something to give them. He had women should be wearing undergarments. Mishum tznius, so it's a modest practice. Okay. Vishatayisha chofefes v'tovelis. a woman should comb her hair before going to the mikvah. Doraisa, Gemara says, what are you talking about? This is a biblical idea. The Tanya, we have a brisa. V'rachatzas b'sara b'mayim. Talking about I think it's talking about a person who is becoming tahor from being a mitzara. So he has to wash his flesh in water. By juxtaposing the two words, his flesh and water, that indicates there can't be anything that that separates between your body and the water. Es basaro, and what about the word es? It's got an extra word in there. Es hatafel ibsaro, so that it comes to include not only your body but things that are auxiliary to your body. Umayni, what does that mean? Say, or your hair. So this is a biblical source that you can't have anything interrupting the space between your hair and the water of the mikvah. If you have knots in your hair, then doesn't that keep the water out? And so it's biblical. So why are we attributing it to Ezra? I'm right. So the answer, Doraisa le'yune dilma miktar. According to the Torah, what you have to do, you just have to check. So yeah, indeed, if you have knots in your hair, you have to comb them out, right? Iname avas midi, or maybe it's not only knots. Maybe there's something, your hair is dirty and the water, the hair itself isn't exposed to the water. Mishum chatzisa. So that would actually be an interruption. But v'asaihu v'tiken chafifa. So, but Ezra came along and says, no, everybody's got to comb their hair, right? So the Torah obligation is make sure you don't have any knots. If you don't have any knots, you don't have to comb your hair. But Ezra wanted everybody to comb their hair. The license was given to perfume merchants to come into town, because we want to make sure that women have access to perfume so that they smell pleasant, so that they don't become repulsive to their husbands. And he had all people who were Balkari, all men who were Balkari had to go to the mikvah. That's also a Torah obligation. What's the source? As called b'mayim, as called b'sara. Man who emits semen has to wash his body in water. So isn't it biblical? Why is Ezra? Why do we attribute it to Ezra? So my answer is Doraisa hu l'truma b'kachim. No, there's no obligation to become tahor from a nocturnal emission, from being a balkari. The obligation is if you want to go to the temple or you want to eat truma, then you have to be tahor. So then you have to go to the mikvah. But asahu tike afilu divrei Torah. So Ezra came along and said, you know what? Even for you just want to learn some Torah, you can't do so as a balkari without first going to the mikvah. So the idea that you have to go to the mikvah to become tahor, that is for doraisa things, for truma and kodshim, that is biblical. And Ezra added on, and also if you want to learn Torah, before you do that, you have to go to the mikvah. Here comes another list of 10 things said about Yerushalayim. Ein habayis cholad ba. There's a house is not permanently sold. So generally in a city, if you sell a property, then that is a permanent sale, as opposed to agricultural land, which comes back to the original owner in Yovel. But a house in a city the sale is permanent, but Yerushalayim is an exception. The rule of an eglar rufa, where a dead body is found, a murder victim is found outside the city, then the elders of the city have to perform this ritual to absolve themselves of guilt for the murder. But that doesn't apply to Yerushalayim. It cannot become a city destroyed for idolatry. It can't become, houses cannot become tame through tsaras, as is the case anywhere else. Yerushalayim is an exception. You can't let beams or balconies stick out of buildings. We'll see. All these things the Gemara will analyze further. V'ein osin bo ashpasos, you can't have garbage dumps. V'ein osin bo kivshanos, you can't make kilns. V'ein osin bo ganos upardesim, you can't plant gardens or orchards. Chutz miganos v'radin, except for rose gardens, or it was a particular rose garden that was grandfathered in. Shahayu mimos neviim rishonim, that was there since the first days of the first prophets. Vein megadlim b'targolim, you can't raise chickens. Vein melin b'chames, and you don't keep a dead body overnight. You bury it immediately, even if the person dies in the evening at night, it still should bury him before the night is out. Okay, so now we will examine each of these in turn. There's no permanent sales of houses in Yerushalayim Dichsiv. It's written in the Torah, the Kamma bayis asher lo chomalas misus lakoneo saladorosaf. Then that house which is not redeemed, if it's sold in a walled city, then it becomes the permanent property of the buyer. And that the opinion holds lo nischach Yerushalayim l'shvatim. So that refers to it says l'dorosov, so it's land that's passed down. But Yerushalayim was not part of any tribe's allocation of land in the original distribution of land, and so it's not land that can be passed down. So therefore, this rule of non-permanent permanent sales does not apply. Why is there no eglar roof in Yerushalayim? Because the Torah says, "Ki the prelude to the rules of the eglar rufa say, if this body is found on land which God gives you to inherit, and again, Yerushalayim is not inheritable land; it wasn't part of any shevet. It can't become a destroyed city for idolatry. If you hear about a whole city that's become idolatrous among your cities, it's not one of your cities, it doesn't belong to anybody. The houses in Yerushalayim don't can't get tzaras. Again, it refers to with house tzaras. It refers to a house that is in the land of your your possession. That's a reference again to land that is passed on from father to son. But Yerushalayim is not like that. You can't have beams or balconies sticking out of buildings. There's a different reason. One reason is because that covers an area, and so if there would be a dead body or a sheretz or whatever underneath that covered area, and somebody else is under the covered area, the tumah would be transmitted. And in Yerushalayim, because of all the kachim and the whole economy there was based on kachim and truma and so on, we want to avoid tumah as much as possible. And mishum d'lo litzaku ole regalim, because you get a lot of traffic in Yerushalayim, right? Especially around the holidays, a lot of people come to visit. And we don't want people to be jostled or to get injured by bumping into these balconies that are overhead or beams sticking out of buildings. You don't have garbage dumps in Yerushalayim because you don't want to attract vermin. Then again, it could be because of tumah, or it just could be that it's it's gross. You want Yerushalayim to be nice, but in the context, it probably has more to do with tumah. Right? You don't make kilns in Yerushalayim because of the smoke. So it's air pollution, and smoke just makes the city dirty, and you want the city to look nice. You can't have gardens or orchards in the city mishum sircha, because you'll have fruit dropping off the trees or vegetables that drop off, and they basically decay, and it could start to smell, or it could be the fertilizer that you need for it is required, and that also produces a smell. We don't raise chickens there because there is so much kachim there, and I don't recall. We had that the other day, right? 1 second. Okay, because if you have chickens, they could wander around eating carcasses of dead rodents, and bring it home and make you tame, and that's bad for people who want to eat kachim or truma. Gemara, and the reason we don't leave dead bodies unburied overnight, that's just a tradition. Um, back to the Mishnah, you can't raise pigs anywhere in the land of Israel. Tana Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, when you had the war between the two branches of the Chashmonaim, that was Aristobulos and Hortus. Horkanus mibifnim, not Hortus, sorry, Horkanus. Horkanus mibifnim, Aristobulos mibachutz. Horkanus was inside the city, and Aristobulos was besieging it. So they needed animals for the sacrifices in the temple. So from inside, they would lower payment in a basket, and they would basically, even in the siege, they sold animals to be used for the carbon tamid. There was an elderly person there who knew Greek wisdom. Now, it's very unclear what Greek wisdom is here, or how it applies to the story. Every attempt to understand this seems to have some deficiency, but it seems to me, the understanding that's most satisfactory to me is that this is a way of thinking, a foreign way of thinking, the Greek way of thinking, Greek philosophy, if you will. And we'll see how that applies. Amarlam, so this guy who was educated with Greek wisdom, he said, as long as the inside organist people are able to continue with the temple service, and you're not gonna win, right? God will not allow it to happen. So they decided, okay, we're not going to do this anymore. So the next day, the money came down in the basket from inside the city. They sent up a pig instead of a proper korban. When the basket got halfway up the wall, not Siparna B'choma, it dug its nails into the wall. The Nisaz Eretz Yisrael, Arbameas Parsa, Arbameas Parsa. The whole land trembled, 400 parsa by 400 parsa, which is an expression meaning, it was some kind of cataclysmic event. At that time, they said, cursed be the person who raises pigs. And cursed be the person who teaches his son to think like the Greeks. And we furthermore were taught about that episode. Usually the Omer sacrifice on Shavuot, on Pesach, second day, on the first day of Pesach, was gathered. The barley was gathered from nearby Yerushalayim, but occasionally, one time, it came from far away, from Ginos Srifin. And the Shavuot sacrifice also came from far away. Yes, the local crop was not really doing well. What's the point of of this story. Okay, it's part of the same lesson that this happened. Because of the siege, there was no the crops didn't grow in the neighborhood. Anyway, the Gemara says, is it really forbidden to teach to study Greek knowledge? Vatanya, we have a brisa, I'm a Rebbe, Beretz Yisrael, Lashon Sursi Lama. Why would you speak Syriac? O Lashon HaKadosh, O Lashon Yavani. Speak Hebrew or speak Greek. Rabbi Yossi, Bavel Lashon Arami, Lama. Why would you speak Aramaic in Bavel? O Lashon HaKadosh, either speak Hebrew or Lashon Parsi or speak Persian. Okay, so anyway, so it's like if we're being encouraged to speak Greek, doesn't this say that it's okay to learn the Greek way of life? All right. So the answer, no, speaking Greek, the Greek language, has nothing to do with thinking like the Greeks. Wharton the linguist might disagree, but speaking the language does not indicate that you're thinking like the people whose language it is. Again, well, I can show you again that maybe it's not forbidden to learn Greek wisdom. Rabbi said, my eye is disgusting to me more than all the daughters of my city. He said that my father had 1,000 children in his household. 500 learned Torah and 500 learned Greek culture. And I'm the only one left. One other half brother, one other son of my one other cousin in Asya. But anyway, Aaron Gamliel taught half of his household Chachmei Yavanis, right? How can you say it's a bad thing? Anyway, so the answer Shani based on Gamliel, Shayu Karovim L'Malchus. Yeah, they had a need to do that because Aaron Gamliel was the Nasi. He was a political leader. He had dealings with the ruling with the ruling countries and dignitaries, and so he had to be conversant and be able to communicate well with them. So it's like, who are you going to send as an ambassador to the United States? Somebody who speaks English, right, or somebody who understands the American way of thinking. And support for this is in a brisa. Masaper Komi, somebody who cuts his hair in a particular style called komi. This is considered, a goyish practice. Of Tulmus bar Ruvain hitirlo saper komi, but of Tulmus was permitted to do that because he was an ambassador of some kind and he had to fit it. And the household of Rabban Gamliel was permitted to learn to study Greek culture, for the same reason. Okay, we'll stop here for today, and David will pick up tomorrow. Have a good Shabbos, everybody.
Thank you.